loves. It is so good to see you guys on the third day. I am starting to speak in tongues. So thankfully I'm with perhaps the most soothing person who we could possibly have. I don't know if you hate it when people are like the father of, the grandfather of, but he is Dr. Andrew Weil, just in case that wasn't evident right away. The person who in my life put integrative health on the map and validated with science the benefits of looking at health in a less linear medical way. This is my interpretation. And so we as She Media and at our whole life health, which is our mantra for this, whole life health, you're perfect. So thank God you were available. So but let's just, because I say integrative medicine a lot, and I don't know always exactly what I'm talking about.
Yes, most people don't.
Right.
So the short answer is it's the intelligent combination of conventional medicine with natural and preventive strategies, and takes advantage of the whole person, not just the physical body. And we use all methods that show reasonable evidence of efficacy, as long as they're not going to cause harm.
Okay. And
so I think
how do we go there? How do you find them?
Yeah, this is the future. And when I started what is now the Andrew Weil Center for Integrative Medicine at the University of Arizona, which is over 20 years ago, the mission was to correct the deficiencies in conventional medical education, starting with nutrition, a glaring omission. The total instruction I got in nutrition in 4 years at Harvard Medical School was 30 minutes.
What, and did you get any more on menopause? Because we have a shortage there as well. But
no,
yes.
And that hasn't changed so much.
Yeah,
but there are other big areas. There's nothing about mind-body interactions. There's nothing about botanical medicine. There's nothing about all these other systems like osteopathic manipulation and traditional Chinese medicine. So we created a curriculum, to round out that. And we have a very intensive 2-year fellowship mostly for physicians, but also for nurse practitioners, physician's assistants, and we've now graduated almost 3,000 practitioners from that.
That's amazing.
And they're in practice in all states in this country and in many other countries.
And how did you, it's such an innovative idea, and it's funny because we are here talking about integrative medicine as the future. How did you have that spark within the science community?
I think I came into the world that way.
Oh my God.
I was always interested in the mind and how the mind interacted with the body. I have a lifelong interest in plants, something I got from my mother, which she got from her mother. That led me to be a botany major as an undergraduate, which is unusual for someone going into medicine. And then I began learning about alternative medical systems when I was still in college. And then when I finished my clinical training, I decided I didn't want to practice what I'd been taught because I saw it do too much harm.
How did you see that? Like, what was the harm?
Well, the main harm, and this is something I would love to talk a little more about, is adverse drug reactions. And I don't know whether people are aware of the extent of that. I'll just give you a statistic which is shocking. In this country, just in the hospitalized population, there are between 200,000 and 400,000 deaths a year directly due to medication. And this is not mistakes. This is the right drug in the right dose to the right patient for the right indication, and hundreds of thousands of people die. And that's just in hospitals. That's completely unacceptable.
That you got to tell us more about that, because that's terrifying.
It's because these medications that we have come to rely on are very strong and very powerful. And I think in the marketing of them, the pharmaceutical companies greatly exaggerate their benefits and greatly downplay their risks. And that's often with the collusion of medical journals and regulatory agencies. And doctors are not trained in any other way for managing illness. If you told the average patient that a doctor visit was not going to result in a prescription, they would feel cheated.
Yeah, it's kind of like an ROI, like I'm supposed to get something.
And if you told the average practitioner to manage a case without using a medication, most of them wouldn't know what to do, because that's all that they were trained to do.
That's so interesting as a system that you can't, no individual is responsible.
But I think, that of course there's a much larger issue, which is the whole healthcare system in this country is completely dysfunctional and collapsing. Just another quick statistic: we spend more on our health than any other people in the world by a long shot. If I were to show you a bar graph of per capita expenditures on health, our bar is off the charts.
Wow.
And at the same time, we have worse health outcomes than any other developed country. The World Health Organization rates us 38th on a par with Serbia. And that's any way you look at it. It's infant mortality, longevity, rates of chronic disease. Something is very wrong with that picture.
Wow.
And
It's staggering.
and as dysfunctional as this system is, it's generating rivers of money, which are flowing into very few pockets. It's the pockets of the big pharmaceutical companies, the manufacturers of medical devices, the big insurers, the for-profit healthcare systems, and they don't want anything to change. And they have total control of our elected representatives. So there's no possibility of change coming from the government.
Wow.
And the only way I see change happening is if there is a grassroots social political movement in which enough people like you, get angry enough about how this is.
Give it up.
And we begin electing different kinds of representatives who have not made deals with those vested interests. I don't see that happening yet.
Well, okay, profit is
Yeah.
a compelling driver of innovation and investment.
Yeah.
What about the profitable world? Is there,
Well, do you know that you in America pay 2 to 3 times as much for medications as people in other parts of the world pay for the very same things? I mean, most people are unaware.
These guys are
of
pretty
that.
smart.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Good.
They know stuff.
So
They're weird.
you want to sort of take action. I mean, you want to, as I said, get angry enough, and we have to change this. So what I've been trying to do is to create a new model of medicine, a new model of healthcare that starts, by really. One of the problems is that this whole enterprise is focused on disease management.
Okay.
We don't have a healthcare system. We have a disease management system
Right.
that's not working very well. And most of the diseases we're trying to manage are rooted in lifestyle. And if people earlier in life made better choices about
And
how
love.
to
You're in
eat.
love as well.
Absolutely. But this could all change. So we have to ask ourselves, why as a society can't we do a better job at prevention and health promotion? That has a very simple answer. They don't pay. And
But
until we can,
isn't there some profit model? You have so many models going. What's the way that we make people who are shitty and don't care actually hit the wallet? Is there?
Well, first of all, I'm a great believer in education.
Yes.
And I think if we could get real health education starting in kindergarten, all the way up, it's not that complicated.
Yes, and that's where the parents. Yeah, we have.
Not that complicated, but
Yeah.
if you're teaching people about how to eat healthy, and the first rule of that is to not eat refined, processed, and manufactured food, you can't be teaching that in an institution in which the food that's available is
and is the cheapest
awful.
and most accessible.
Yeah.
So
The last I checked, something like 48% of U.S. hospitals have fast food restaurants on their premises now.
Totally makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, what message does that send?
Totally makes sense.
Yeah, right.
And we have, I think, by educating teachers and kids young and endeavoring to have affordable options that are all in food, straight up. Think about your nutrition. How does it make you feel? You're also educating parents in a way that maybe, I started learning things about sustainability through my kids' education, which was useful. So maybe that is, the starting younger. This one, Ailey Cohen, loves to talk about all the toxic things in our world.
Yes.
Not loves to talk about, but. And oddly,
I know Allie very well. And I really like her work.
Okay, there you go.
Yes, I trained her.
See, we got a community going here.
Right.
And so my son, who is dear friends with her son, doesn't let me buy my refined sugar stuff.
Great.
And so I'm not suddenly allowed to, in a very positive way. He has that app, Yuka. Do you guys know what this is? That when we go shopping for, I don't know if it's good or not, but it definitely makes me realize everything I buy at the store in beauty. And he's got his little app out and he's like, yeah, Mom, if you want your scalp to fall off, great. So I think the youngins, maybe do we have more?
Let's hope.
I
hope.
That could be. Okay, and then tell us, because I love the term, about whole plant medicine.
Okay, so this is a favorite subject of mine. I talked about the harm that's caused by the medications that we've come to rely on. Another problem with them is their expense, which is a big part of why we're spending so much in healthcare. It is very nice to have strong medications available if the body is very out of balance. You know, if you're dealing with a critical situation, you want to kind of get it back to equilibrium. But once you do that, it is not a good idea to rely on these kinds of medications. And I'd just like to explain this for a while.
Please.
I think most people don't get it. Most of the medications we use are counteractive of physiological processes. And one way you can get a sense of that is that the names of categories of drugs we use mostly begin with the prefix anti. You know, we use antihypertensives, antispasmodics, antidepressants. So these are chemicals that push against body processes. As I said, if the body's badly out of balance, yes, you want to get it back to a balance point. But if you rely on these kinds of medications, how does the body react to them? There is a basic principle of physiology called homeostasis. You know, you push against an organism with an outside force, it pushes back. And if you use a counteractive force over time, that homeostatic pushback may get you into worse trouble than you had to begin with. And I'll give you an example that most of you can probably relate to. If you've ever used a nasal decongestant spray, you know, your nose is completely blocked, you can't breathe, you spray a chemical into it, and magically, you know, your nasal passage is open. Depending on what drug you've used, either 2 hours or 4 hours later, there's a rebound congestion. If you use another dose of the drug at that point, it is very easy to slide into a dependent relationship where you can't breathe without the chemical. On a more important scale, these drugs, the acid-blocking drugs that we use for gastroesophageal reflux disease, you know, when I was growing up, there was no GERD. People had a heartburn. And they treated it with Tums, which is a very safe preparation.
I love Tums.
Tums are great.
Especially now they have the chewy ones.
Yeah,
so
calcium
good.
carbonate, very safe. And I think most people understood that heartburn was your stomach's way of telling you that you had mistreated it. You know, either you ate too much, you ate the wrong things. Anyway, now we have totally medicalized this, and the cause is seen as overproduction of stomach acid. And the treatment is a very strong drug that blocks acid production. So if you block acid production, what is the body going to do? It's going to try to make more acid. So if you try to reduce the dose or stop the drug, there's an outpouring of acid and the symptoms are worse than before, which convinces people, oh, I guess I have to stay on this. It is very, very difficult to get people off of these medications once they start. And they're handed out like candy with no warnings to people at all. I cannot tell you how many people I've seen who've gone to doctors complaining of indigestion, reflux, and there's no dietary history been taken. Nobody's asked, what are you eating? Are you drinking coffee? Do you drink alcohol? What's your stress level? You just take this drug, and then you can't get off it. Okay, antidepressants, the SSRI antidepressants. You know, these increase serotonin at neural junctions in the brain. If you boost up serotonin, what is the body going to do? It's going to make less serotonin, and it's going to drop serotonin receptors. So if you try to stop the drug after a period of time, depression is often worse. And this is even, you know, this is recognized. It's called tardive dysphoria, which means lingering bad mood caused by the drug. So this is a general principle that I see. If you rely on these strong counteractive medications, the homeostatic reaction of the body often gets you into worse trouble. It prolongs or intensifies conditions. So the integrative approach, you know, really begins with looking at how can you change lifestyle, what lifestyle changes can you make? Like with GERD, it's obvious. You want to look at what people are eating. You want to avoid.
By the way, I'm on that medication. That's why this is funny. And like a lot of my colleagues know that.
No, they're dangerous.
I know. I'm going off right now.
They have all sorts of other side effects.
I am going off, and I'm going to stop eating, and I go on it so I can.
I mean, I could go on about all the things that are wrong with those drugs.
You're changing a lot of my practices.
Okay. You know, just off the top of my head, you know, stomach acid is your main defense against infection coming
Makes all the
by
sense
the
in the
oral
world.
route.
Yeah.
I have seen people that have gotten really, really serious infections from eating raw shellfish, a bacterial infection, which they wouldn't have gotten if they had enough stomach acid to kill the organisms. You know, anyway, that's one. They also increase risk of dementia. I could go on.
Well, everything you're describing, the experience I had with a doctor also, where it was like not about.
Yeah, just take this.
Yeah, just take this, and then you can still drink coffee and alcohol.
So, yes, right. So there's a natural
a priority.
product. There's a licorice extract called DGL, deglycyrrhizonated licorice, that increases the mucus coating of the stomach and makes it more resistant to irritation by acid. Totally safe, non-toxic. That's a very different approach, of increasing the body's defenses. So that's an example of, the kind of medicine that I teach.
How do you find that, though? Because with this apparatus, that to your point, we're spending more per human, telling a human very quickly that they should leave the office with a pill and a cure, or not even preventative, treat this symptom. Where do we find, I feel like I have all the benefits of working in media and don't know.
Okay, well, go to my website, read
clearly,
my books.
Clearly.
But, that the practical problem of the doctors that I train, I feel bad when we just had a graduation last week, but when, they're so highly trained, they go out in the world, everything is stacked against them. All the priorities of reimbursement, they're not paid for teaching a patient a breathing exercise or how to eat. They're paid for doing interventions and so forth. But when a doctor tries to talk to a patient about making lifestyle changes, most patients tune out. Patients, because dietary change, starting an exercise regime, starting to meditate, they all take time and they take work. And a pill seems like a quick fix. And if the patient doesn't get the pill, they'll go to another doctor till they get something they've seen advertised on television. So, I tell my students that they have to be able to explain to people why in the long run it is in their interest to do these natural methods, because over time they're going to work better for you, whereas the relying on the counteractive medications are going to fail you and often get.
What about, do they sometimes integrate? I'll admit having been prescribed SSRIs during a challenging time period during which
so
you had to restabilize.
For
but then
short-term use,
yeah,
maybe, I would say no more than a year.
Okay.
And you should never stop a medication suddenly.
Right.
You should always have other
There's a
things
taper,
in place.
yeah.
Yeah, taper, but also institute other measures with depression. There's so many things.
Well, always therapy.
Exercise.
Exercise, yes.
Physical
Agreed.
activity.
Finding flow.
Omega-3 fatty acid supplementation, making sure your vitamin D levels are very high. Doing some kind of, I'm a big fan of cognitive therapy.
I love CBT.
It's great.
It's wonderful.
Doing some kind of, there's amazing amount of research on the beneficial mental effects of gratitude.
I've seen this.
It's amazing. Like just doing something, it's as simple as keeping a little notepad by your bed. And when you go to bed every night, write down 3 things of that day that you had to be grateful for. There's research showing that people who do that for a month have long-lasting improvement of mood that lasts for, a number of months.
I think those practices are probably the point that we have to, because whenever one says this in these forums, it's logical. And then life comes back and you're in the hustle where we're not developing the tools, perhaps. And you've developed so many people, which I feel is one of the best ways, perhaps, to distribute a message. Like you have your disciples who are out teaching the Weil way. Yeah. So you got to keep doing that.
Well, this is clearly the way of the future, because as I said, the current system is going down the tubes. This is just not sustainable. I don't know what will happen. It may be that the whole current so-called healthcare system will have to collapse. I think a lot of smaller and community hospitals aren't going to be there anymore, and maybe large urban areas will be left with just one central hospital, which will be the only one that can afford all the hardware, and they'll be for trauma and critical illness and terminal care, and all the rest of the stuff will have to be treated elsewhere. I've always had a vision of some kind of what I call a healing center coming into being, that institutions where you could go for a few days, for a weekend, for a week. You could go if you were well to have your lifestyle reviewed. When you came out, you'd know more than you went in about how to live, how to grow some of your own food, how to cook, how to handle stress, and that these would be staffed by teams of of practitioners, of all sorts. I mean, you'd have Chinese medical practitioner, yoga teachers, as well as integratively trained physicians, and that stays in these would be paid in whole or in part by insurance. So that's
wonderful.
a vision I will try to.
Well, I think that your vision is getting there, and thank you for sticking at it for the decades and working against inertia, where it does feel like I don't know why, because I'm not specifically in this space at all, but I've told you this, that even my psychiatrist husband went to get trained in integrative at nearing the age of 60. Just I was like, you're going to be irrelevant, bud. And so
it is the future, and I've always said one day we'll be able to drop the word integrative. It'll just be good medicine.
Right.
And
I think it's moving. Do you guys think it's moving? I think it's moving.
Right.
And one more. I know we're going to be out of time before, but. You're here primarily to talk to me, but also, just kidding, because you're launched your new nonprofit, the Beneficial Plant Research Association.
Yes, this was an organization I founded in 1979 to help teach people and promote the use of and research on plants that could improve human life. Not just medicinal plants, also novel foods, beverages, fibers, so forth. But it's now come into being again. We have a wonderful board of scientific advisors, and we are identifying species of plants. And you can go to our website, BPRA.org, to find out more about it. But this is one of the, we, in integrative medicine, a major portion of our curriculum is on botanical medicine and natural medicine.
And do you think that, thinking about a Naropa or places where you teach, as this becomes more and more interesting, and I do think it's becoming much more validated, will it be a curriculum component that's more?
Yeah, there already,
effective?
I think there's a group called the Academic Consortium for Integrative Medicine. I think now something almost 2/3 of the nation's medical schools have joined this.
Okay.
And so some of them, a lot of medical schools now at least have courses in integrative medicine. And we also have a program called Integrative Medicine in Residency,
Right.
which is a condensed curriculum that's been adopted now by something like 120 residency programs around the country. So my vision is one day, whether you go to a dermatologist or a psychiatrist or a gastroenterologist, that practitioner will have at least had basic education in nutrition and mind-body interactions and know about these other systems that are available.
That's
Yes,
the
I got
snaps,
it.
because I got it snapped. You don't need to interpret that. Okay, so we also theme-wise, treating women who are going through hormonal changes, which has been wildly, as you know better than any, under-researched, under-respected, undervalued, because we're just a sum of our fertility parts, and once we're not, then we may as well, we're not even handmaids anymore. So our utility is done. We should exit stage whatever. And we are seeing in workplaces, they're beginning to be more understanding of and treatment, or not treatment at all, but space.
I'll tell you two quick stories. One, in my medical school class, which was 130, there were 12 women, and they were given a very hard time.
Wow.
And not that many years before, Harvard Medical School had not admitted women.
Whoa.
Another story, the dean of our College of Medicine, it was a wonderful man, the late Jim Dolan, was a cardiologist, just a very interesting man. He told this story that one day he was doing cardiology rounds. This was at the University of Massachusetts, and they had their first female cardiology resident. And the group was in a patient's room. They were around the bed talking, and when they left, he noticed that the entire time this female resident had been holding the hand of the patient.
Oh, wow.
And he said he knew in that moment that medicine was going to change.
That's pretty dope. That's a pretty good story. That is amazing. And what was what else? What else? So hormones, so many things that are managed by the plant, by the...
Let me just say, I think it is important to understand that hormones, the technical term is they're pleiotropic, meaning they have many different actions.
Wow.
And we tend to only focus on one thing.
Okay.
Like insulin, we think of as only lowering blood sugar.
Right.
But insulin has effects in the brain. They're insulin receptors, and we don't really know what the cognitive effects of insulin are. So because of that, I think one should be cautious about taking hormones. That you
Right.
don't want to take a hormone unless there is a demonstrated
sure.
need for them. I'm horrified by I'd say, the promiscuous use of testosterone,
Right,
in men,
right.
for example. But it's interesting to watch how, with hormones for menopause, how that has shifted. There was a period when that was really pushed on women in the 1980s.
Was the hormones?
Yeah,
were pushed on
and women were made to feel, stupid if they refused, if
Right,
they balked
right.
to take hormones. Then there was a lot of concern about the risks of taking hormones.
There was some also bad
Absolutely.
research.
Yeah.
Bad
But
research.
now I'd say
Yeah.
things are shifted back,
Right.
in another way.
Yep.
And clearly, there are some women who sail through menopause.
Right.
There are others who are
they?
completely well. There are a few out there, but there are others who are incapacitated
Right.
by it. And I think that judicious use of hormone therapy,
Or of something else even. I'm not even.
of bone
like,
health, of all that, yeah.
Or other things. I think that, as you say, there's a way to solve it quickly with, and I think we're all pissed that the bad research was out, but there's also nature for me. Various things have been very helpful to managing the mood elements, the sleep elements. It's not like there is a lifestyle change
Right.
that has to occur, I guess.
There was also, it is shocking and also, I guess, funny to look back at. I have a book called From Chocolate to Morphine, which
I
is
love that
about
title.
all
Can I have all of
mind-altering
them?
drugs. They tried to ban the book. This was
If you can say they tried to ban my
But one
book,
of the things that I did was I got pharmaceutical ads from medical journals, and in the chapter on stimulants, there was when Ritalin was first produced, the manufacturer had a series of ads in all medical journals that are just classic. It was like, on the left, there was a 2-page spread, and on the left-hand side, there'd be a black and white picture of a housewife drooping over a sink full of unwashed dishes or a messy house.
Dear Lord.
And on the right, and it said, "Doctor, what can you do for this patient?" And then on the right-hand side in color, she was all bright and the house was clean, the dishes
Right.
were washed.
Oh
It
my
said,
God.
"Write Ritalin on your prescription pad."
Oh my
And
God.
the clear message was, what are you going to do for these pain-in-the-ass women
Yes.
who probably have nothing wrong with them,
Right.
but are taking up all your time and not doing their housework?
That's like
give
the
them
lobotomy.
give them a
Yeah.
stimulant.
Yeah, that's the like Stepford wife where they're
Right.
like, oh, they don't want to have sex anymore.
That was the attitude.
Right. That is amazing and does indicate a lot of progress, and I know we're way over. But is there anything else to share with the audience, and also ways that we can support your work?
Well, please, you can go to the website of our center, which is awcim.org. We have great online courses, some for the general public as well as for professionals, in nutrition and cancer prevention. We have events. There's a site that helps you find one of our graduates.
Cool.
Anywhere you live, you put in your state.
That's
city,
very
you
cool.
can
What a
find
tool.
One of our graduates, because I think finding an integrative physician to work with is very, very useful.
That's
so
powerful.
One thing to do. And then check out my books and my
Of course.
personal website, drweil.com, which has a lot of good
But I
information.
think that additional utilities we will work
Yeah.
on getting the curriculum into our, there's a
Yep.
lot of powerful moms in the room
Good.
also,
Yeah, that'd
into
be
the
great.
schools. And also, I do think addressing all of what plant-based medicine can do for women over 40 is we are looking for the solutions.
Yep.
And
And be wary of pharmaceutical medication. There are some drugs that are good. I often give us an assignment to people, like to think, if you're going to a desert island, what 12 drugs would you take with you? It would be none of the stuff that's advertised on television. For me, things like aspirin, an opioid, a good sedative, things that have been around for a long time.
Right,
And also learn about natural alternatives and other methods of managing common conditions, and then get angry about the
Yeah,
situation
yeah.
that we are in.
Right.
And,
Love
help
it.
stir up, this
Stir up some noise.
movement that we need to
we
create.
can make noise.
Yeah.
Okay, well, and thank you so
Right,
much.
sure.
Everybody's so appreciative of not just your time, but your wisdom and the work you've done. Everybody go to the places. And I think also applying to the things that affect us, applying these types of solutions, whole plant medicine, Didn't know what it was yesterday. I'm definitely going off my acid thing when I get home.
It's slowly.
I'm ripping it off.
Yeah.
But I think that it's a great education at different stages of life.
Yeah.
And we might be at one where it's really going to be interesting. So
Good.
thank you, my man.
Yes.
Okay.